folks, Roland Martin here. I am broadcasting live from Virginia Beach, Virginia, where the folks here at XQ America are having their XQ Live Super Schools event. Today, of course, is Thursday, April 25th, 2019. My apologies for the serious technical issue we had. We had some issues in terms of getting our signal out of our office in Washington, D.C. So as a result, we decided to actually go live direct from here. And so that's where we are right now. And so we had to go to Plan B. Those things happen all the time. And so, again, we're here in Virginia Beach where XQ America, the education group, they're having this pop-up event. We broadcast from the one in Los Angeles. They're having the one here in Virginia Beach as well. There'll be one later on. And so we'll be talking with, of course, Russlyn Ali and Marc Ecko with XQ America. We'll be also talking to the mother of Pharrell. He is having a music festival, the first one here in Virginia Beach this weekend as well. They're partnering with him about that. But there are some other news stories that we, of course, have been looking at that are critically important. That is in the news. Joe Biden announces he is running for president. He vows a return to America before Donald Trump. But what he has also done is he has also already released that he has apologized to Anita Hill. Now, here's the deal. Joe Biden is the 21st Democrat who has jumped into the race. And more than the other candidates, he's put the anti-Trump message front and center. He seems to be pitching himself as the only man, the only person to bring us back to what the world was like when President Barack Obama was in the White House. He dropped his announcement video today, and one of the things that he is doing as a part of this is, of course, laying out his anti-Trump message and saying that America cannot afford another 4 years of Donald Trump. Now, the question is, you already see people saying that Joe Biden is going to be the front runner for the Democratic nomination, but the question then becomes, what will he actually do to actually win it? He has to rely on major donors. He's having a fundraiser tonight featuring, of course, one of the executives with Comcast. He does not have a large, small donor list like Senator Bernie Sanders and some of the other candidates, and so we shall see what happens. So Joe Biden is now in the race for president. Also, yesterday, the People Presidential Forum took place in my hometown of Houston, Texas, on the campus of Texas Southern University, and there were some issues with Bernie Sanders where he was actually drew some boos. He was one of the 8, then 20 presidential candidates who participated. Only 8 could do so because of time constraints, and it was pretty interesting because when he began to talk about his work with marching with Dr. King, what ended up happening was it was not happy at all with the audience there. And so that was quite interesting there. Today, former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner took folks to task at a Bernie Sanders rally in Fort Worth, Texas, and she said that she was embarrassed to see folks booing Bernie Sanders because of his work along with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so drama there at that forum yesterday. We shall see what happens next. Now, speaking of drama, there are some critical voting rights stories that we have been covering. We start in Michigan, where a 3-judge federal panel ordered the state legislature to redraw state legislative and congressional maps for the 2020 election. Now, according to the ruling, the gerrymandered districts approved by Republicans who control both chambers of the legislature deliberately discriminates against Democratic voters by diluting the power of their vote. That's in Michigan. In Nevada, a bill restoring voting rights to certain felons passed the assembly there 32-9. The bill would grant voting rights to anyone not incarcerated. There are about 90,000 formerly incarcerated folks in Nevada who now be eligible to vote. Now, of course, the 2016 presidential and Senate races in Nevada, both won by Democrats, had a margin of way less than 90,000, and so that could play a critical role in who wins Nevada in the 2020 campaign. Now let's go to Florida, where I warned you what Republicans were going to do after Amendment 4 was passed, granting voting rights to the formerly incarcerated upwards of 1.4 million people. Guess what? Republicans there passed a measure in the House 71-45. The vote was along party lines. What does it do? It requires all court fines, fees, and restitution should be required before felons can vote. The Senate bill requires only restitution. Is yet to be heard on the Senate floor. Also, you have not heard from Governor Ron DeSantis. Will he sign this bill if it is passed? Like I kept telling y'all, it was one thing to get excited because it passed, Amendment 4 passed. The ACLU has already said they're going to sue the state of Florida, but I told you Republicans were not going to be silent when it came to the issue of who was going to vote there in Florida. Speaking of Florida, a decision was rendered today. For the first time in nearly 30 years, a Florida cop was sentenced to prison for an on-duty fatal shooting. Palm Beach Gardens officer Numan Raja was sentenced to 25 years for killing a stranded black motorist, 31-year-old Corey Jones, in 2015. Raja had been convicted of manslaughter and attempted murder last month. What made the case stick was the audio recording of Jones's call to roadside assistance that contradicted what the officer said about his actions before he killed Jones. Again, Raja going to prison for 25 years for killing Corey Jones. Also, folks, let's talk about what happened in Texas, where one of the killers of James Byrd, he is dead, was put to death yesterday in Texas. Remember, on June 6, 1998, James Byrd Jr. was dragged 3 miles on a lonely road there in Texas. And it inspired federal hate crime laws in Texas. John William King, 44, was one of the 3 convicted for the murder. He was executed last night by lethal injection. A second man was also executed for the crime. And so, again, that's where we stand in terms of that case, James Byrd Jr. Folks, I covered that story that took place in East Texas, and I'm going to tell you right now, I walked that road in the daytime, and it was an eerie feeling walking that road in the daytime. And so, but glad to see some justice in that case there. And James Byrd was nearly decapitated when he was actually dragged on a truck, in the back of a truck, down that particular road. Let's talk about Baltimore, folks, where things are getting worse for Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh. This morning, the FBI raided her home, a second residence she owns, plus City Hall, and a nonprofit where she has worked with, and even her attorney's office. Agents were seen carting out boxes of her self-published children's book, Healthy Holly. The book is at the center of a growing scandal. There were hundreds of thousands of dollars of purchases of the book by entities with business before Catherine Pugh, her official capacity as mayor and as a board member of the University of Maryland Medical System, but also when she was in the state Senate. Now, no arrests were made today. The Maryland governor and the Baltimore City Council have all asked her to step down. She has refused to do so and is on medical leave, saying that she had pneumonia. Yet there are some reports that she also has left Baltimore and left the state of Maryland. So we'll be covering that as best as we can. As I told you, folks, we're here in Virginia Beach with the folks with XQ America, a school initiative. They're holding their Super Schools Initiative. So they have these live pop-up events taking place across the country. They've already had 2 this year. The first was in Los Angeles. We broadcast live from there. And the second one took place in Chicago. This is a third of the 2. And so we are here helping to broadcast there what they're doing here when it comes to education. And so we're going to be talking with some of the guests right now. And so what I want to do is bring one of our first guests right now. She is Carolyn Williams. She's the principal officer from One Hand to Another, an organization founded in 2008 by her son, Pharrell Williams, to, as he said, to change the world one kid at a time, providing them the tools and resources to meet their unique potential. From One Hand to Another is a partner of XQ America with this particular event right here. And so, Carolyn, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you? Thank
all
you for
good.
having me.
All good.
Yes.
Glad to be here. So,
Thank
first and foremost, obviously, education is a critically important issue. I was earlier this week. I was in Sacramento, where we had a school choices, the Black Choice Town Hall, with the folks with the Fortune School. And now we're here at XQ America. And why did y'all decide to partner with XQ on this particular event? You have the music festival going on, but having this one as well.
Well, because first of all, Something in the Water was about a multifaceted need for our area. And one important area of need relative to, Pharrell's interest is education. And so with From One Hand to Another and what XQ is doing, we thought there was some synergy.
When you talk about, obviously, education, how critical was it for you raising your son and making it clear that it doesn't matter what you go into, the reality is you have to have education as the backbone of your entire existence?
Well, for someone who is an educator and where education was important as a family growing up, is one of those things that we know that going forward, if you want your children to succeed, that they have to have an education. And it wasn't just for him. 10 years after that, there was another son, and 10 years after that, there was another son. And so now we're talking
10-year gaps.
10-year gap.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry. So, and even now, grandchildren, but besides that, as a former educator, just having that experience, being in the school system and our children. And then from one hand to another, what we've been able to do is try to fill the gap, at least with our son, that kids were missing in the summer, making sure that there was no recidivism, and so that they would keep that brain fresh. So when they went back to school in September, which I have witnessed, it took a month to try and catch up what they left with, right? But when you keep it active, ongoing in the summer, they're that much ahead of their counterparts who may not have had that education during the summer.
Well, one of the things that for me, I think that also jumps out when you talk about this here is that there's someone who's watching, they probably say, well, you were an educator, so you understand that. But the reality is parents are indeed the first educators for children. And look, my brother was a teacher, two of my sisters, one was a teacher's aide, and their deal also is that, look, it can't just be on a teacher or a principal. You've got to have the active participation of parents to ensure success for their children.
Absolutely, and I'm sure many are familiar with the African proverb, it takes a village. My grandparents, my parents, myself, going into my children, there was this group that came together. If you got in trouble at school, before you got home, everybody knew about it. And so they worked together to make sure that the children did what they needed to do for school. And I have to tell you that, when you look back today, sometimes there is the vision that there is a gap in education relative to keeping kids on track. But there are factors that play into that, whether they have the same economic advantage or education. And so one of the things that from one hand to another premises is that we try to give exposure and opportunities and experiences so that every child will have a level playing field out there.
Well, one of the things that also jumps out to me when we talk about this issue, when you talk about the continuing education, my wife and I, we raised 6 of my nieces, and our whole position was that you're operating in a 24/7 boot camp. And the reason we called it boot camp is because we did not believe that there was a moment where you were not learning. Mm-hmm. And my deal was we did not allow certain things to escape us, where one time one of my sisters said, hey, it's the weekend. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize we stopped talking proper English on the weekend.
Right.
I'm going, no. If I hear something, I'm correcting at that very moment.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, we sort of have to have that attitude. First of all, black people have always cared about education.
Right.
But I really believe it has to be this intense focus to understand, especially those first critical years from they're born to 10. I mean, those are those critical years because the brains are like sponges, and we got to be just on it constantly and not say, oh, they'll get it later. That's not always going to happen.
Because you know what? There are other cultures where before they even get to kindergarten, they know several languages. There are, opportunities for them to go to school and just learn different things. And so what we have to do is preface that education is just as important for us, as you say, and do everything that we can to make sure that our kids are on the same level field. And we do what we can do.
The last question for you. There's somebody out there, they have no idea where to start. What do you tell them?
Where do you start? Well, first of all, I would say that there are opportunities to communicate with individuals who you may feel have a connection with education, whether it's people in your church or your community. There may be other organizations that are out there that can educate your child. But in this area, I'm going to say that from one hand to another would gladly be able to work with the kids, especially in the summer. It's a free opportunity for the kids, field trips, exposure, guest speakers, businesses connected. We try to break it so that everybody come together to help the kids.
All right, sounds good. Well, we surely appreciate it. Where can folks get more information about the foundation?
From one hand to another, FOHTA.org, and
that's it. FOHTA.org.
Yes.
That's it. That's where they can go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Sir. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, folks, we are here. I'll take that from you with folks at XQ America. Their Super Schools Initiative, and so what they're actually is a production. They have a pop-up magazine. SQ Plus Pop-Up Magazine presenting Super School Live. If you go to their YouTube channel, they have the Super Schools Initiative, which has really been about how do you redefine the school, how do you make it more interesting, utilize more innovation. So that's one of the things that they have been working on. So in a moment, we're going to be talking to Marc Ecko and Russlyn Ali, of course, leaders of this initiative. And so they are, I'm looking around, there's Russlyn. Come on, Russlyn. See, she's hanging out behind me. She didn't even know she was here. So grab the microphone.
Hello, sir.
What's going on?
How you doing?
Chilling.
Thank you for being here. We're in
Glad
beautiful
to be
Virginia
here.
Beach.
Glad to be here.
You see this face of humanity
Yeah,
in this room?
I see.
I just finished this round table, Roland Martin, with 30 of the most phenomenal young people from schools around this area. Taught us so much.
Cool.
So much.
This is the third one. So Los Angeles, Chicago, here in Virginia Beach. What have you seen as a difference in all three?
So there's some common fabric throughout. Young people are hungry to have a voice in how to make their schools work better for them. They are not satisfied with the education they are getting. They are eager to make a difference and be the voice for change. So I find the diversity of community and geography is special, but the commonality amongst all these young people ready to act and be the change they want to see is what I find most inspiring.
We've got, obviously, candidates announcing. Joe Biden announced today. You've got, he's the 21st person on the Democratic side.
Yes.
And the thing is, you see all the drama in the Department of Education with Betsy DeVos, a place where you used to work as well. And one of the things that I often talk about is that we have to connect the dots.
Yes.
That it's one thing for people to say, you know what, I don't want to be involved in that. I just want to be focused on just about my child's school. But the reality is, what happens in Washington, what happens in state houses, what happens at school administration buildings has a direct impact.
Absolutely.
On what happens.
Absolutely.
And dealing with one of the things that we'll be working with y'all on, school boards.
I mean, and not just a responsibility, they govern the whole system, right? School board members, we're talking about $600 billion a year that they are responsible for spending. Federal government, you're talking about 10 cents on the dollar. Every dime that is spent in public schools, the federal government has a role to play in that. So the entire ecosystem must work together. And, you know, you and I have talked about this many times before. We have never seen a real civil rights, a real equity, a real positive change at schools without the federal government's involvement, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, and that's why I keep emphasizing why you have to connect the dots.
That's right.
Because when I travel around this country and I talk to people, folks really sort of have this view of, you know what, that's not my thing. I don't really want to get involved. And when you look at school board races around this country, there are people who are literally determining policy, what's happening in schools, who only got elected with a couple of hundred votes.
That's right.
And so we spend like all of this energy right now on the presidential campaign, when actually most people's lives are going to be transformed by that local board.
That's right. That's right. They are responsible for all of the decisions made at the state and local level when it comes to how our schools operate. You have state boards of education, you have local boards of education. Less than 5% on average people vote in school boards.
Less than 5%.
Unless it's an election that has a presidential or it's an otherwise sexy election, less than 5% on average, right? This matters. If we care, we will vote.
So with the Super Schools Initiative, after we went through picking all the folks, all the different schools, first of all, how has that been going? You know, how have they been redefining these schools?
Well, we're at 19 now schools, transformative models that are showing us how to do high schools differently than we've ever seen. But we now also have a few states. Rhode Island is working on transforming all of their high schools. Tulsa, a district in Oklahoma, working to transform all theirs. We have demand and interest from state leaders everywhere seeking to get community voice engaged to dream smart and then build the next generation of high schools for their young people.
So you got somebody out there and they're saying, that's great, it's wonderful y'all in Virginia Beach, but you know what? I don't know where to start where I am. We're talking about high schools, but there are elementary schools and middle schools as well. And so what do you say to the person, or let's say they don't even have any kids, but they say, I'm concerned. Where do they start? What would you tell them? Okay, fine. This is what you can do right now.
So first, you just mentioned school boards. Show up at a school board meeting. Hear what's happening in your local community. Up to now, it was actually very difficult to know when your school board meeting was, who was running, when the elections were. We have a new tool on our website that allows you to enter your zip code, and all of that information will come to light at xqsuperschools.org. Show up at a school board meeting. Listen. If you are a parent,
so I think folks saying that I can barely hear her mic, so keep talking, and I'm going to hold the mic up to you. I got it. Go ahead. Keep going. No, keep talking that one. They're going to get it covered regardless.
All right, so show up at a school board meeting, right? It matters. It counts. If you are a parent of a young person in a school, your voice, you are the most important stakeholder in your community at your schools. So show up, be present, vote, right? Inform yourself with data. We have new tools on our website as well that will empower you to be able to act. If you want to redesign a high school in your community, we have information for that too. Again, at xqsuperschool.org. But Roland, today, I know we have a lot to talk about, but I met these young women tonight that go to school right here in this community, who talked to me about a kind of entrepreneurship we so rarely see. So I would love to introduce you.
Sure.
All right. Mayana and Tiana, come here. I want you to meet Roland.
How you doing?
Hi, I'm Tiana Williams.
Tiana, good to meet you. Mayana, good to meet you.
So Mayana and Tiana.
So she got the mic. Go ahead. Keep
participated in our round table tonight, right? Every community we go to, we anchor ourselves in what young people are telling us.
Right.
And not only did they help me understand better what's happening in their schools and how they want to see great change, they also told me about an organization they started themselves as juniors in high school on helping young people whose parents are incarcerated.
All right.
So I would love
to give her the microphone. I'll hold this one here. And so when did you start? So what's the program you started?
The program is called BCI. It's a nonprofit program.
What does BCI stand for?
It stands for Build, Care, Inspire. Go ahead.
So pretty much we have stories and experiences being children of incarcerated parents, and we understood like the feelings and the experience that that it takes and the courage that it takes, and we just wanted to encourage people or children within our situation that it's more to life than what your mother or your father has done. Life is so many opportunities. You just have to have that motivation, inspiration to want to get it.
So when did y'all start it?
We actually had a rough start last year. We're actually in the Entrepreneurship and Business Academy, so starting a business was a project for us. So at first it didn't hold that passion until we realized our stories could be what our business was, and that we could be a service instead of a product, because we were like trying to push ourselves to be a product, and that was just something we wasn't into. So we started last year. It was 2018, and then we didn't get funded at this event called Pitch Night, so we had to bootstrap over the summer, and that's when BCI became a program for kids with incarcerated incarcerated parents. That's when it became BCI, because we had to bootstrap. We had to find something that really meant something to us, because it took us a while to actually start raising that money until we realized something meant something to us. So when we started making it for kids with incarcerated parents, that's when the passion grew stronger and stronger as people were talking to us and we were meeting different people. So then we finally started making those connections and talking to people to get to the places we are kind of at right now.
So have either one of you had parents who were incarcerated?
Both of us have.
And so still are, or in the past?
My mom was released when I was 15, but my dad died in prison.
And my mom just came home like last year of June.
And how did you deal with that? Because, I mean, you're in classrooms. I mean, look, you've been going to school, elementary school, middle school, and that is a different dynamic.
Yeah. When my parents left, it was like my life got flipped upside down, and I was only 7 years old. So for me,
so both were gone at the same time.
Yeah, both of my parents went to prison at the exact same time, same day, same time, place, all of that. So for me, it was just a shocker, because to me, my parents were like heroes. I didn't even know it was any reason for them to be in prison. So it was like a constant reminder with the fact that everybody in my school knew my parents. So it was a constant remembrance when.
Say that again. I got it. All right, we're going to turn this way. Got it. We got you.
It was a constant remembrance by, like, the teachers just, like, things as simple as go home and get your parents to sign this would bother me just because my parents weren't there. So I had to just remind myself that I could be somebody, and I was just kind of grateful that at the fact that my grandma was there immediately. I didn't really have to go through anything as far as not having somebody to take care of me financially, but I had to understand emotionally. As a young 7-year-old, I had to inspire myself to be something. I could have easily become a statistic, started getting in trouble, but for one, my grandma wasn't having that. And then for another thing, I just had to remind myself that it wasn't worth it. Like, I will always think about how kids that do go to Renaissance and stuff, and how some of their stories are that their parents are incarcerated, and I could never understand why you chose to get in trouble after you just saw what happened to your parents. And then I realized everybody doesn't have the same mindset of me, and that's why I wanted to start BCI. And then when I met Mariana, it was just like, let's go.
Now, did y'all also discover that there were other students who were like you, that you think that you were in this thing by yourself? Then all of a sudden you were like, wait a minute, hold up, this is not just about us.
It felt like it. I have 3 other siblings, so I know, like, my siblings are going through the same thing I'm going through, and like we have different
older or younger?
Oh, I have 2 older siblings.
Okay.
I have a younger sibling, but I act as the oldest sibling.
Okay, got it.
Because I just had that. I've always had that strong mindset, and I didn't want to, for my siblings to feel like everybody's failing them around them. So I have like a kind of like a motherly like instinct for some reason, even at a young age. So.
And how old are you?
I'm 16.
Got it. All right.
I'll be 17 in July.
Okay.
But I always felt the need that I needed to protect my siblings as much as possible. So I was that one to like carry on. And if they weren't making good grades in school, I was that person. I was motivating them. They would cry on my shoulder, and that just made me realize, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want them to go through this. And that just pushed me to be the person that I became today.
So what is initiative? What do you do?
What do you mean?
What do you do?
Okay.
What's the program?
So it's right now, it's just a program, and we run 3 different workshops. It's an inspiration workshop, a growth workshop, and a team building workshop. They're all based on our name, and we actually built our own curriculum based on those, like, to help to make those 3 workshops a reality.
Are the workshops continuous? Are they once a month, or how?
Yeah, we run them through different summer camps, and the first one is going to be on May 25th through Girls Without Dads, and then throughout the summer we're going to be working with From One Hand to Another, and we just found out that we're going to have the funding to start our own summer camp next summer.
Okay. Now, what do you do during the school year?
Work on that.
Yeah, everything.
We are also entrepreneurship and business academy students, so that school grind, keeping our grades up in AP classes and the struggle.
How do you also, how are you integrating social media to connect with other students in this area, also or around the state, around the country, who also are dealing with parents who are incarcerated? Have you done that?
Well, pretty much, like, we're just getting our feet in the water. So we really don't have like that connection as of yet, but we're also in many programs that help us to.
Now, you do know that after this airs and this thing gets sent out, then what's going to happen is, you got to remember, I've got 2 million social media followers. So when this thing goes out, y'all gonna get some calls. So do you have a website?
Yeah, we have a website. We have our social media. We have we don't have a Facebook. We have an Instagram and a Twitter and something else. Oh, and an email.
Okay. What's the Instagram?
Okay, our Instagram is at BCI Nonprofit. Our email is at BCI Nonprofit at gmail.com, and the Twitter
is BCI Nonprofit.
Yeah, everything is BCI Nonprofit.
And the website?
And the website is DCI nonprofit.com. Yeah, .com. Okay. And it's you would probably have to put a /Wix, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's made through the Wix website because it's just a little starter.
Okay. Because again, I mean, there are a lot of people who obviously in the same situation the two of you have been in, and they certainly probably are looking for some advice, some counsel, or they may be inspired to say, hey, let's start something like that where I am. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Well, I love my aunt.
Yeah.
She's been the person who's given me that adult structure, because when I was 3 months old, my father, he passed away of cancer. So I really didn't have my mother or my father. But when I met my aunt, that's when, like, the things that I knew, she just pretty much, like, reinvented it and helped me to be a young adult, pretty much.
Well, cool. Well, let's go ahead.
Yeah. Well, for me, I just want to thank my grandma and literally, I learned that it does take a village to raise a child, even though it was two of us, simply by her being a longshoreman. So many people had to come in and help us. And I just really appreciate that, because honestly, if those people weren't there, and I had to realize that if you are nice to people and you make those connections, that people will be there for you, having to realize that pushed me to be an independent and make sure that I make those right connections. So I just want to thank her for taking care of me from the jump.
Well, it's good to meet you, and certainly good luck with it. All right, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, you can give the microphone back to Russlyn there. I'll ask you a couple of more questions. Yes. So the thing that also I think is interesting, by frankly what y'all are doing with this, and then of course with us being able to also live stream it, is that you're not going to hear that on CNN, on MSNBC, on Fox, on these mainstream networks, because frankly for them it doesn't rise to it, and they're dealing with stuff that people are living through every single day.
That's right. They are the change agents of our time, right? I met these young women 30 minutes ago. But to see not only the passion, the life experience, you can't get more expert on criminal justice than those two young women. So while the rest of us with lots of degrees behind our names, we can talk all the wonk, we can talk about the ecosystem, we can address the policy changes that need to happen to make people's lives better. If we don't make sure that the young people that are dealing with this and living with it every day are not at the center of our conversations, if we don't help empower them to make their voices heard in state houses and in the Congress and in the White House, we will all produce change that is not good enough.
But this is also where I believe, if you are a policy maker, where you have to operate from the mindset of we don't know it all.
Absolutely.
And so
absolutely,
if you empower next generation to say, okay, what do you think?
That's right.
And then they're going to tell you.
Turns out they will come up with ideas that no, you can't, right? I mean, we start with a deep sense of humility, not because we don't have lots of research and evidence to say what works, but because unless you are actually in the seats and in the shoes of the people that we seek to help, you're actually making decisions based on ignorance. So in every one of these communities, listening to those young people, teaching me, and then hearing things like, come on, these young women are juniors, Mayana and Tiana, juniors in high school, have started an organization on how to help young people like themselves whose parents are incarcerated. You're right, that doesn't go on mainstream. But if you want to see the best of America, if you want to see the best of what our public schools have to offer, you come talk to those two young women.
So what's next? So Virginia Beach is the third of the three cities. What's next?
Well, we're going to continue to work on how to storytell. This is about, listen, change of this magnitude requires a cultural shift.
Right.
Only twice in our country's history have we redefined what it means to be a learner. We used to lead the world when it came to high school education. We were the first in the world to do universal high school education. We're now lagging behind developed and developing countries. So we're going to continue to figure out ways of telling the story and working on the kind of cultural momentum and cultural shift that is necessary for change of this magnitude. We're going to continue to push the policy agenda. We're going to continue to empower leaders and communities everywhere, showing us the way, because seeing is believing, and make sure that young people know that there are adults out there that will support them to achieve their dreams. This is a movement, and we are working to earn it.
Well, and I think that, and I've used this phrase for years when I tell people there are some things that are moments, and then there are other things that are movements. And I think part of the problem is that when you talk about a movement, you have to go into a movement understanding that it ain't going to flip in 6 months.
That's right.
Or a year.
That's right.
And I think even if we look at a lot of the social justice stuff, when I look at a lot of the people who get burned out, a lot of people who are frustrated, it's because there was this idea that, oh, well, you know what, I don't see things moving fast enough in 2 years. I use the example all the time, the Black Freedom Movement. It was 13 years literally from the death of the lynching of Emmett Till to the assassination of Dr. King.
That's
right. It was 13 years of hard work, and people are still doing the work. So it ain't going to happen,
all deliberate speed, right? Brown versus Board of Education. All deliberate speed. It takes a long time to see change that we're talking about, but it is about brick by brick, empowering community, helping to make this notion of schools as the great equalizer a part of serious civil rights and equity conversation of the day.
Okay,
that's what we're here to do.
This is my third last question. Sound like a Baptist preacher, because again, as you were talking, I began to think about it. So for all these years, folks were talking about criminal justice reform. Then it finally sort of clicked, or people realized that, wait a minute, if we start electing progressive district attorneys, we can change. So all of a sudden now, you got Larry Krasner in Philadelphia. You had the late Kenneth Thompson in Brooklyn, Aramis Ayala in Florida, Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore. You've got Kim Foxx in Chicago. You had
Kamala Harris in San Francisco.
You go on and on. And then, of course, now you got what John Crusoe just announced in the last couple of weeks in Dallas. So people realize, oh, wait a minute, hold up. I can't just look to Washington, D.C.
That's right.
For those DAs. Again, going back to the school board piece, for somebody who's watching, they have to understand that those are regular, ordinary people who sit on those school boards.
Absolutely. And responsible for the most crucial decisions that will affect
curriculum, teachers,
their young people's
buildings,
lives.
bonds, contracts, all this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
And so everybody wants to run and become members of Congress without realizing, actually, you could take $5,000, get signs, everything else, and literally win a local school board seat.
Well, and President Jimmy Carter was a school board member first, right? So this pipeline is one that is important. But yes, school boards are making some of the most crucial decisions that affect kids' lives every day. Well, join them, vote for them, run for them. Be the voice that matters for change.
Well, cool. Well, we're going to be, of course, focused on that over the next several months, this school board initiative. We're going to be able to provide details for you, be able to give you information on when your local area, we're going to have your school board election. That's also part of the issue. Folks have no idea a lot of times. They don't pay attention.
But this new website allows you to know. And you'll hear stories tonight about high school students running for seats and winning on their local school board.
All right, cool. So we appreciate it. It's always great to see you and also be here pushing this thing out, and hopefully we can empower some people to step up and get involved.
Thank you for being
I think the program is going to be starting in a second, and so I think you got some little work to do. So I appreciate it. Right. Always good seeing you. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
All right. Again, folks, that was Russlyn Ali with folks with XQ America, and we certainly appreciate what they're doing. We also thank them for being a partner, Roland Martin Unfiltered. I actually was one of the advisors for XQ America when they were getting started with the Super Schools Initiative. And in fact, what we are doing here is what we've been doing here is really focusing ourselves on doing things that you're not going to see elsewhere. And let's just be honest. I can tell you right now, it's right now, 7:31, cable news networks, they're probably talking about something dealing with Trump, having 30 different panels ad nauseum talking about Democratic presidential candidates. But these are the bread and butter issues that impact us every single day. These are the issues that are impacting us, and we want to be able to be here to enlighten you, empower you as well. And so, and Russlyn was absolutely right. I mean, listening to those young women talk about this initiative they started, I mean, you can hear it in their voices, you can see it on their faces in terms of what their concerns are as well. And so this is also why I created this particular platform, because we did not want to do what everybody else was doing. We did not want to keep doing the same thing. We want to be able to bring different stories and unique stories to the table. And so what is happening here, and so you see the shot here, okay? So what's happening here, they actually have a live initiative. And so I'll step to the side over here. So they have a live initiative that they are doing. It's an actual program. Now, we're not going to be live streaming the program. And so it's a live program they're doing. It's really focused about school. It's about, see, you hear the announcement. The show is about to begin. And that's, again, what it's all about. And so what we want to be able to do is to keep bringing you these stories. We're here right now. Monday, I'm going to be in Greensboro, North Carolina, where the American Heart Association is having an HBCU initiative that they are doing there that's about, again, improving healthy outcomes. And so that's really what Roland Martin Unfiltered is all about. And so, we're about, telling these stories, and we appreciate SQ America being a partner and making this possible as well. And so, again, Russlyn Ali, she is the Chief Strategy. First of all, she is the CEO of XQ America. And Marc Ecko is running around here. He's a Chief Strategy Creative Officer. And so Mark might pop in at any given time. And so if he does, we'll just simply grab him to do so. So let me talk about this story here. And I think it was important. Yesterday, you saw me on this show talk about and deal with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, right-wing activist who did lots of commentaries talking about Christians being under attack, attacking Democrats, talking about Sri Lanka and other places. But he said nothing about 3 black churches burning down in Louisiana. Well, now you have Franklin Graham, Reverend Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, the late Billy Graham. And he has sent out some tweets with regards to presidential candidate and South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. First of all, I can't even pronounce, is it Buttigieg or Buttigieg? I can't pronounce it. First of all, I got to figure out how to pronounce his last name. But this is what he sent out. He said, first of all, the mayor is right. God doesn't have a political party. But God does have commandments, laws, and standards he gives us to live by. God doesn't change. His word is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Now, he then says, the mayor says he's a gay Christian. As a Christian, I believe the Bible, which defines homosexuality as sin, something to be repentant of, not something to be flaunted, praised, or politicized. The Bible says marriage is between a man and a woman, not 2 men, not 2 women. The core of the Christian faith is believing and following Jesus Christ, who God sent to be the Savior of the world, to save us from sin, to save us from hell, to save us from eternal damnation. And that was a tweet that Franklin Graham sent. Now let me speak to that. Now, that is Franklin Graham, Reverend Franklin Graham's perspective, his opinion, based upon his biblical teachings. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to accept that for the purpose of this conversation. Because, see, we can get to a back and forth whether you believe that or not, whether Franklin Graham is right, whether he is wrong, whether Mayor Pete is right or wrong. But I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to deal with the fact why I think Reverend Franklin Graham is what I call a situational Christian. Here's Reverend Franklin Graham chastising Mayor Pete. Here's the same Reverend Franklin Graham who gave Donald Trump a pass. This is the same Franklin Graham who would not criticize Donald Trump for his comments about grabbing women by their vagina and kissing them because he wanted to. This is the same Reverend Franklin Graham who would not say jack about Donald Trump, openly talking about going into the dressing rooms at his pageants and seeing these nude women walking around. This is the same Reverend Franklin Graham who would not criticize nor condemn Donald Trump for paying off porn stars and having numerous affairs with women, cheating on his first wife for the second, cheating on the second wife for the third, and cheating on the third wife while she was pregnant as well. Reverend Franklin Graham has said nothing about any of that. That's why I would never, ever follow the spiritual teachings of Reverend Franklin Graham. Because, see, he is what I call a situational Christian. That depending upon the person who he is supporting, depending upon the political party, that's his perspective. You got Reverend Robert Jeffers, of course, out of Dallas, again, explaining away and dismissing anything that Donald Trump does. You don't hear Reverend Franklin Graham having the audacity to speak boldly and confidently about how Donald Trump is children in this country, taking children, ripping them from the parents' arms, and not having them reunited with their families. Please tell me that this is the same Reverend Franklin Graham who wants to preach to us about morality. He says nothing. See, what we have to understand, folks, is that you have these white conservative evangelicals who, let me be real clear, they will allow Donald Trump to say or do anything because all they care about is him appointing right-wing conservative judges to the Supreme Court and to the federal bench, because all they care about is whether or not Roe v. Wade is overturned and whether or not you have same-sex marriage overturned. These people don't have any prophetic. All they have is political and partisan. You don't have Franklin Graham going to the White House speaking in a prophetic way. See, when David slept with Bathsheba, it was the prophet who went to David and told him you were wrong. It was the prophet who went to David and said, how dare you send Bathsheba's husband Uriah to the front line in order he to be killed to cover up your sin of sleeping with that man's wife, and then said your son will pay the price for that and your son will die. It was the prophet who had the courage to tell him that. Prophet who went to Saul and said, you're going to be the next king. But the prophet then said, you're not acting like a king is supposed to act. See, prophetic voices are not afraid to speak truth to power. But Franklin Graham is a joke. And let me say it again. I would never, ever listen to Franklin Graham. It was the religious theologian, it was the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer who wrote about cheap grace, where you go out and you commit wrong, oh Lord, please forgive me, and you go do it again. See, that's what Franklin Graham does. He's extending cheap grace to Donald Trump. So he will sit here and challenge a gay presidential candidate, the mayor of South Bend, but he will say nothing to Donald Trump. He will not criticize his actions. He is mute when he says nothing. He was not properly criticizing and condemning Donald Trump with what he said about the Charlottesville folks, good folks on both sides. I have absolutely zero respect for any person of the cloth who is silent on the shameful words and actions of Donald Trump. And that includes you, Franklin Graham. I won't even call you a reverend because I believe that your silence is shameful. The situational Christianity is shameful. You want respect, well then you must earn that respect by being a prophetic voice. You fail to lead. You fail to lead the way your father led. In fact, I dare say the only reason you're even in charge of your father's ministry is because you are a male. The real preacher in the family is actually your sister, Ann Lutz. That's the one who should be running the family business, the one who's a real preacher. What I need all of you to understand is that for 4 decades, all we have heard from these right-wing ideologues who are posturing themselves and presenting themselves as men and women of faith, they have been frauds. Jerry Falwell, the moral majority, Pat Robertson, Robert Jeffers, and the line goes on and on. All of these individuals, they will choose party over faith. They will choose politics over the prophetic. I don't want to hear anything again, not a single word from any white conservative evangelical about morals and values, because if you are willing to stand up and support Donald Trump and the things that he has done, you can't call yourself a child of God. You can't call yourself a spiritual leader, because you are leading folks straight to hell with your actions. And Reverend Franklin Graham, well, I'm just going to call you Franklin Graham. you don't deserve our respect because you're not a moral leader. You are someone who chooses to excuse anything and everything Donald Trump does because all you're willing to do is to kiss his butt and not be a prophetic voice. And that is a shame. I want to thank all the folks, again, for being here. My apologies, folks, to my panel. We had a great panel lined up for you as well. Unfortunately, because of technical difficulties back at our studio in Washington, D.C., we were unable to be able to do what we had to do. And so that's so sorry about that, folks. And so we will be, of course, back in our studio tomorrow in Washington, D.C. We're going to be live. And so looking forward to being back in the studio. And, again, we're going to also be live streaming this later, what we're doing with XQ America. Looking forward to that as well. And so we thanks for all the folks who made this possible as well. And so, look, technical difficulties happen, but we fought through that thing and still was able to get on the air to be able to broadcast this show from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Folks, don't forget, if you want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, all you got to do is go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, join our Bring the Funk fan club, and do me this favor. If you actually give, if you send a check or money order in, please be sure to put your email down so we can give you our discount. And if you also pay, join via the Cash App, share your email with us so we can also send you our discount. Next week, I'll be letting you know about some of the products that we're going to have on the website that you can be able to purchase with your discount as well. All right, folks, for everyone here in Virginia Beach, Virginia, I certainly appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. All right, y'all take care. Holla. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.